All right, we've got a few people loading in. Hey, everyone, this is the monthly section support call, section leader support call. So it's good to see you. I always introduce myself, though I see you every month, if not more often. I'm Rosa Miami, Director of Engagement and Membership. We're really excited to have you here today. This is the meeting, again, where we talk about kind of operational things and also find ways for the sections to share information with each other and learn about your roles and that kind of thing. And also we have a few staff as well who are here to answer your questions. So with that, let me turn it over to Amber and then we will go over the agenda.
Thanks, Rosa. Hi, everybody. Good to see you. I'm the VP of Affiliation Engagement and Membership. Thanks for joining live today. We have a pretty full agenda, but you probably noticed that we did allocate some time for discussion. We're really trying to lean into collaboration and provide that space for y'all to talk to each other. So we're going to talk about leadership transitions. Today, we've heard that that's something that you wanted to talk about. So we're going to do that, but please keep the suggestions coming for what you'd like to talk about and what you'd like to see on this agenda. We really take those seriously and try to incorporate them as often as possible. But thank you again for all that you're doing. And thanks for the partnership. I'm going to pass it back to Rosa so we can keep rolling.
All right, thanks, Amber. Why don't we pull up the slides and look at the agenda, which I think all of you saw in emails, but we'll go through it quickly. All right, so let me also give you one update. Probably late today, or at least by Monday, section financials will be available to the section executive committees, probably by late today. In the place that you usually find them, but Josh will send you an email and remind you where they are. So if you have questions, get in touch with us as usual. We'll get some answers for you from our team or from finance or wherever, but those are the next quarter are coming. So agenda, we're going to talk a little bit about event cost transparency. We've got Lauren here who's going to talk about this. I know Lauren's kind of been doing the roadshow on this topic, so some of you may have seen this, but really want to make sure everyone's aware. We're going to give, Josh is going to give a few support updates around AGU 24 and newsletters. And as Amber mentioned, we're going to do a discussion around section leadership information sharing. I hope you all saw that there was a question that was in the agenda that we provided last week and then with the reminder email yesterday. So really just kind of an open discussion there. So why don't we go ahead and turn it immediately over to Lauren.
Hi, everybody. If you were at the council meeting recently, you may have seen parts of this presentation or these slides. So as Rosa said, I apologize for any redundancy, but we felt like it was important to really make sure that this information was available to all of you and given in a couple of different ways. Always happy to answer any questions that you might have on this. So next slide. So we always start with our core values, and we wanted to make sure that all of you remembered, I'm sure you do, that we build our meetings kind of based on all of these values, and we try to create experiences and services that are in support of these. Next slide. So kind of a quick, and this, while many of the concepts that you'll hear today or that you, when we talk about costs, I mean, certainly our annual meeting, the big meeting is probably the biggest impacted by these, but certainly costs across the board for all meetings and events are something that AGU is following and watching. So we'll start with our annual meeting. We strive to provide a safe and welcoming environment. That really is our number one job. We want to keep you safe and we want to make you feel welcome so that you can do the things at the meeting that you want to do and connect with everyone that you want to connect with. I won't read through all of these, but I'll just highlight that there is still volatility in costs. We are still seeing a lot of volatility. If you go to the grocery store or if you are trying to book an airline ticket right now, you'll see there's, you know, maybe some things are coming down, but some things maybe not. So when you're building kind of inflation on very high costs already, we might say, well, we're only going to raise something 2 or 3%, but you really feel that because it was raised so significantly before, right? So, and there is a direct cost for every attendee. So even those who pay $0, there's absolutely a cost to serve that attendee. And we do have quite a few comps, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. And really our goal is to educate all of you so that when you do get questions, it's not just, oh, that meetings VP, man, she's just hiking up the costs. This is all of us. And this is a financial picture that we are trying to maximize every dollar of value out for every attendee, and give as much value as possible for the dollars that folks spend to come and attend. Next slide. So this is the coffee slide. There was a great, if you've already seen it, we didn't do the poll this time, but what we wanted to do was kind of illustrate what the markup is for a gallon of coffee at any kind of large event or small event. This doesn't just occur at the annual meeting, but you can see here, when you think, well, I could go to the Starbucks, or when I brew my own pot of coffee at home with the beans that I bought on sale at the Costco, it's a lot cheaper. But in this case, when you're looking at the service charge, you're actually paying for somebody to brew that coffee for you, to roll it out in those giant containers or pour it for you, and then wash up your cups and make sure you have all of the appropriate coffee condiments, right? So there's some variation here, but this is actually a very accurate picture of what we're paying. And when you think about the amount of coffee we purchase at every annual meeting, it's very significant. In DC, we get a little bit of a break because we do not pay sales tax in DC, but you can see that DC also, we still pay that 36, almost 37% service charge, or $37 in service charge, which is a 26% overlay on everything that we do there. So it was a shocker to me when I first got into the meetings industry. I have been in the industry for long enough to be considered a dinosaur. And I can remember when coffee first hit $100 a gallon and we were all aghast at that, right? So it's gone a little further since then. Next slide. So when we talk about revenue and expenses and trends, this is a really nice kind of trends sheet. Abstract fees from a revenue category, the percentage change has really come down. And it doesn't mean that the abstract fee was reduced. It was that over this period of time, we saw fewer abstracts submitted because of COVID. And then coming out of COVID, now we expect that to come back a bit. Registration fees are up, and this is, and certainly we recognize that that is painful for many of you. You're getting complaints about those fees. Exhibit revenue, 10%. Increases. Sponsorships, we're excited. That's 11%. We certainly want to see that come up a little bit more. But when you match those increases to the expense categories, you can see that those expenses have gone way up as well. So we're seeing, and in fact, the revenue has not kept pace with the escalation in expense. Things like travel, things like meeting costs, so food and beverage in particular, professional services, meaning just the labor that it takes to have people come and support the meeting, have gone way, way up. So this is just a nice kind of summary slide of, where we're expecting things to go and how that has worked. Next slide. So what are the drivers of these costs, and what are we even thinking about? And one thing I would love for all of you to think about, maybe you can even type it in the chat, how many people do you think work the fall meeting or the annual meeting? Sorry, Josh, I owe you $1 for that. How many people work the meeting? I'll give you a second. I mean, obviously almost every AGU staff person, right? But who else works our meeting? Because when you think about it, we are essentially moving a group of people that are the size of a small city, right? 29,000 people. into another city. Oh, thank you, John. See, John, of course, John has a scientific approach to this, right? He's going to come up with a percentage and give us. So John, really, really good guess. So we have about 1,000 people, maybe 1,100 people who support the meeting. And that's in addition to all of the staff who attend. So think about people like, you know, the dock workers who are unloading the trucks and the people who are working at the hotels and at the convention center that are directly in touch with our meeting, the security teams, the janitorial staff, the banquet staff, all kinds of folks are helping to support this meeting. So great job. Yes, and the puppy daycare workers, there are a couple of those there too. We didn't count the puppies this time as actually supporting the meeting, but we could certainly make that argument in the future. So we've got a lot of people who are supporting this, and they all are paid people. Certainly the hotel workers don't come and support us out of the goodness of their heart, right? So we are looking at the professional drivers of labor across that. And I would say that the business events area has seen some of the highest labor increases actually across all labor categories. And it's actually noted in the Department of Labor statistics. So they were the group that took the longest to come back. And they are also the group now that you're really seeing that play out in hotel rates, for example, with very high hotel rates because they've got more demand, and they are still, hotels in particular, and we'll talk about this a little later, are still really struggling with their workforce pool. So the costs are here. They should not be a surprise to you. But certainly we think about anything that is connected to shipping, labor, and travel as something that has seen significant cost increases. Next slide. So when we think about blending communities and services and features, one of the things that we've certainly had people say is, well, like, why do we subsidize childcare at the meeting? Because I don't bring my kids and, you know, I don't need that. But somebody else might be saying, well, why do we subsidize, you know, X at the meeting? I don't like coffee. Why do I have to pay for the coffee? So what we're doing, just like in your universities or even some of your own organizations, we're looking for the right blend of services to support our attendees to be the best they can be. We want folks to come. We want folks to be able to focus on sharing their science and connecting to this community. And we want to provide the services and the features that enable that to happen. So just like you are maybe your university does this, maybe you're in a city and you are paying for services that you don't necessarily use directly, but your community is better because you're paying for those services. So that's what we're always doing, is we're looking at those blends of services. So I understand sometimes it feels strange to say, well, I don't need that exactly. Why is that part of my reg fee? But what we're doing is looking at registration as a total and making decisions about what makes people able to attend and give a great experience. Next slide. So the annual meeting, and we also have some things that are very particular to this meeting. So it's not just all of those other cost drivers, but we also look at using the most sustainable products and foodstuffs. We look at basically emissions calculations for our food chain, and we want to make sure that we're doing the best that we can. And that certainly was driven by a sustainability strategy that was created by AGU members and with AGU staff. We're looking at we have increased the number of people who are $0. So tier 1 and tier 2 countries where the salaries are very different than salaries in Europe or in the United States, we recognize that paying those registration fees are really a burden, and we still want them to be able to come and attend and provide that accessibility. So those fees are $0. We have business practices that drive a lot of manual time and cost. I understand that everyone likes to do their presentation on the plane. I also like to do my presentation on the plane for meetings that I attend, but that means that we have speaker ready rooms, and we have a large speaker ready room contingent because people are uploading and meeting with their colleagues and kind of pulling those presentations together at the last minute. So that's an example. And then cities, all of the cities that we go to are large cities, and we have this increased need for security protocols and planning and protection. And that is an investment that we have made, and it is a great investment. But again, over 1,000 people supporting the AGU annual meeting in any given city. Next slide. So this is just a quick updated look at kind of how inflation is impacting meeting costs. And this is from one of our partners, Merits. And you can see certainly over and this was total average. So in 2023, when we looked and compared to 2029, food and beverage, they said, was up 25%. In most of the cities that we were working with, we were seeing up 40%, right? So again, this is an average. Audio and video services, I mean, up hugely since we started this in 2019, since we started looking back and saying kind of what was that massive escalation. Some of that was due to COVID, and, you know, people let their staffs go during that time, and then they had to rehire them. And you also saw labor pool and qualified labor pool challenges, and AGU has certainly experienced that as well. So I think the message on this slide is, while we're seeing a better outlook in terms of these increases, when they are built on already very, very high costs that have escalated already, it doesn't necessarily feel like a bargain, right? So just kind of food for thought there. Next slide. So why can't we bring our own pizza, beer, wine, coffee, soda, etc.? I wish we could, right? I wish we could just staff things a little bit differently. Rosa and I could drive to the Costco. We could load up our cars, bring everything back for you, and make that trip 2,000 times. But we can't. And the reason that we can't is convention centers and hotels are companies. They are providing us space, and we are often not paying directly for that space because we have food and beverage, because they know we're going to purchase food and beverage. They have very strict rules on who can bring food and beverage into the building. And I shared a couple of signs, like, I mean, when you go to a concert or to a ball game or go to the zoo or a museum, you often also are not permitted to bring in your own food and beverage. And that is just kind of a way of doing business. I will say we have that challenged every year. And I understand that it seems frustrating that we're not getting enough value out of the food and beverage spend that we have. But what I will say is that the food and beverage that we have is labeled. Every ingredient is labeled, and we're working in very controlled kitchens. And we're doing that for preference, certainly, but we're also doing that for allergy. So when we have somebody say, these are absolutely nut-free, we have not had any kind of cross-contamination, we're working in certified kitchens to deliver that. There was an incident recently at a meeting, it was not an AGU meeting, where folks kind of said, well, we're going to bring in our own, and they did. And they kind of generally put like labels on it, and they had somebody go into anaphylactic shock because they had labeled something as nut-free and it was not. And that person died at a meeting. So when I tell you it's a safety issue, it is a safety issue. It's also an issue because when we are doing business and we are taking up the massive amount of space that AGU requires, that is something that we essentially, nothing is free, right? We're going to pay for it one way or the other. I know the prices sometimes seem very high, but they're very high compared to what you would pay, for example, in a grocery store. Really, there's actually a lot of consistency in the prices that we're paying across the board for food and beverage, even those very high coffee prices. Next slide. So we would love to talk with you about what you think. This won't be the last time that we talk about these things. And again, happy to answer questions. But what I would say is the team is always looking at this. We talk about costs all the time. We talk about how we maximize our value all the time. We talk about whether or not We need the space that we have. And right now, I have to tell you, the demand for space is, the program committee, any member of the program committee on this call will tell you that the demand for space and the need for session space and the need for people to be able to give oral sessions is very, very high. So we're working across the board for that. And we are always looking for ideas and maybe things we don't need, but we're also trying to pack so much value in, and really appreciate all of your ideas. Thank you so much, and happy to answer some questions for you.
Thanks, Lauren. Anyone have any questions? I think we've got time for maybe one or two. John, I see your note about cost cutting, and I think Lauren's been addressing that as well, that we're always looking, right?
We are.
I like the numbers. So I'd love to see a spreadsheet that shows all the cost items so that we can, as a community, start to give input about, gee, how important is it to have fancy backdrops or other things that look cool, just to get a sense of what are the real numbers. We're numbers folks.
So I appreciate that. I think that's maybe something that the meetings committee could certainly take on and bring a report back. In terms of, specific line items and costs and things like that, I would defer to, our leadership in terms of, I don't think that we're looking for this community to get in and fix our budgets. I do think we're looking for this community to tell us what is most important. So John, to your point, we've actually reduced our plenary room quite a bit because people were saying, maybe we don't need such a fancy room. But we also are in this place where AGU is recognized as the largest Earth and Space Science conference in the world. And there is, when we do plenaries and we have very high level speakers, we also want to make sure that that those sessions are not kind of just in a standard oral session room, right? So balancing all of that value and like what we truly need versus what we don't, that's absolutely important. And would love to find a way for this group to weigh in on that.
All right, great. And Andy, we see your note about virtual and continuing to look at that. I don't know if you want to address that.
Yeah, that's actually a great point, Andy. Thank you. We did some work, and it's something that we've done some statistical analysis about, and maybe it's something that we could come back and report to this group about. One of the things, for example, we cut way back on our virtual engagement this year. We knew that there were fewer people. So for example, at the 2023 meeting, it was less than 10% of the people that were virtual. What we also found out was that many of you were joining the meeting from San Francisco in your jammies from your hotel rooms. So the virtual was actually being really heavily used by people. The live virtual was very heavily used by people who were actually traveling to the meeting, and everyone is a virtual attendee, right? But should we pay for that, or should we ask that all of you get dressed and come over to the center and attend those sessions live? So what you're going to see, and actually this is going to be posted on the annual meeting pages, is kind of what our new virtual environment really looks like. It will heavily rely on more content capture, Andy, which is what we used to do, right? We used to capture it and then people could go back and view it. But we do want to preserve the ability for virtual attendees to present in an oral session. That was kind of one of those things that we really felt strongly about. They will have to pre-record their presentations to make sure that we have the ability to deliver those presentations seamlessly. But many conveners have also started to say, you know what, I really want the people who are here to have the chance to kind of stand at the podium and present. So that's something that the Fall Meeting Program Committee is very, very focused on. We're taking that big interim step, and you'll see that new experience outlined on the website. And we reduced the cost of that virtual option because we knew that people were not going to be attending the way that an in-person attendee would. So more to come on that, but I think it's a great point.
All right, thanks, Lauren. Why don't we move on to the next? And of course, continue to ask us questions, and we'll get in touch with the meetings team if it's stuff that we can't answer specifically. Josh is gonna do some, I'm gonna ask Josh some quick updates around section support, and then we want to quickly get to the discussion question as well. But Josh, why don't you go ahead?
Hello, everyone. As you know, we are working on the complimentary tickets and registrations for sections. I've sent you all emails if I haven't received that from you yet. Those are due on the 26th of July. I will be out of the office starting tomorrow until all of next week. So please remember, if you are submitting them, to send them to the AGU section help at agu.org email address. And I'm going to put that in the chat now. And please remember to include the attendee's full name and their email address and a brief justification. If you do not have the names yet selected for the awardees, you can put the award name on the template and we can fill that out at a later date. And same thing if you are reserving spots for speakers or representatives for sponsors. And then just keep in mind that your complimentary registrations will be paid from your section funds. Any questions on the complimentary tickets?
If the complimentary tickets are given to students, does that come out of our $5,000 student support thing?
It can. You'd have to indicate that. That would be for registration. The ticket cost for events are that doesn't have to be paid for from your funds. It's just money that you're not receiving for those tickets. Okay.
Sorry, Josh, can I just get clarification on that? So the the 5K that we get as board designated funds,
Mm-hmm.
Can it be both our student rep and our early career rep who can be supported on that?
I believe so.
The registration, if we,
Yes, that's correct. Yes.
Okay. Thanks, Greg.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? All right, on to section newsletters. So here are stats that we've received for the June newsletters that went out. We have the sent number, and that's the number of members who are affiliated to that section that received the newsletter, or that the newsletter was sent to, apologies. And then delivered is the number of members that are affiliated to that section that have actually received the email in their inbox. This number may change from the sent number as emails change and we might get bounce backs. And then we have the open number, which is how many members opened that email. And then we have the percentage for that. And then the clicked number is how many people clicked on the newsletter and went through it. And then we have the clicked percentage. Oh, I'm sorry, they clicked on a link in the email. And then the percentage that clicked on the email. Sorry, I kind of lost my track there. All right, and then we have the unsubscribed number, which is the number of members that have unsubscribed from their newsletter. And then the opt-out is the percentage of members that opted out of their newsletters. So this is just for the month of June that we have here. And you can see that AS is the section that sends out the most amount of newsletters, or to the most amount of members. And then the next slide here, at the top are the year-to-date averages, or numbers. We have delivered to a total of 81,553 members. And that the average per section is 1,897. And then that's just the same information that was on the previous slide, but just for the year to date. And then the box on the bottom is how many newsletters that were sent out per section this year alone. So you can see that 15 sections are participating in newsletters so far. And there's 25 sections altogether. So there are 10 who have not done so yet. Sometimes we have sections that send out a newsletter once a year or once a half a year. So that could be the reason for that. And some sections don't send any out at all. But if you have any questions on newsletters, feel free to get a hold of me. I can also connect you with our communications team and they can give you some best practices.
Thanks, Josh. And yeah, if you are not kind of participating in sending newsletters out, you may want to consider it. We do get quite a bit of feedback from them, and it's one way you can engage. But Janet, I see your hand is up. Go ahead.
Yeah, thanks for this. Sorry, I've just got lots of questions. But so I send out letters to Ocean Sciences section, but obviously they're not counted here as newsletters, right?
Correct. These would be the newsletters that are submitted to me each week that our communications team builds and sends out through our database.
So the letters that I send out don't count then?
Yeah, correct, because I wouldn't have a way to capture that information.
Okay, thanks. So if we wanted to
But that is a good point to make, that it's not that sections, not all sections are not sending them, or sorry, sections that aren't listening here are not sending them. They just might be doing it on their own.
Right.
Thank you, Janet.
Thank you. Thanks, Josh.
Right. I mean, I don't know all the detail, Josh, but there, I guess it's Marketo is the platform through which the newsletters are sent, and there's ways that we're tracking and have found a way to be able, I'm trying to think of the word here, where we tag information to see what the performance is, but it has to go through that system. So that's, yeah. Anything else? Oh, and there's a question.
Were sections given the right to have their own mailing list? I don't have any way to mail all my section members.
I'm assuming that, Janet, that you collected that the emails on your own, because we haven't handed out the information for member contacts because that goes against our policy.
Well, on AGU Connect, there is
Okay.
an Ocean Sciences network, and that's got 4,000 members. So I send it out through that. Does that clarify that?
It does. And Janet, actually, now that you've said that, there's a way that we can give you stats on what goes through Connect as well. So if that's something you want, let's do that for you and others. Go ahead, Steve.
Yes, I'm confused. Our GPE list of members runs to 1,650, and there's like 420 on your list of GPE recipients. Are there really that many people opting out of the AGU Connect newsletter? And if so, should we be worried?
Let me go back to that slide. So sometimes the numbers will vary because the beginning of the year, not all of the members have renewed. So this will only be sent to active members. So at the end, do you know where you got the number from for your membership? Is that the?
It's a password protected spreadsheet that they use for targeting donors and things.
Okay. I'll have to look into that. I'm not sure why that would be different, but I can reach out to the communications team and check on that for you.
I mean, however you slice it and dice it, it's hard to imagine that GPE only has 440 members.
Do you know if you're including your secondary members as well?
Well, yes, that spreadsheet does include secondary members, but surely they should be getting the newsletters.
I'll check on that as well.
Okay. All right, thanks, Josh. Why don't we move on, because we've got about 20 minutes left. And let's see, I'm looking at things at the chat at the same time. Why don't we, I'll look at the chat in just a second. So let's do a discussion session here. And Josh, I would ask that you put this question into the chat and then we pull down the slides so we can see each other. But you got this question in advance. So I should mention, and I've mentioned in other calls, one of the things we're looking at is a section leader journey map and trying to understand the role of section leaders and what it is that you do on a daily basis. And some things are bubbling up, including this area of transitioning information in different leaderships as you move along. I mean, this is an election year, right? That there's going to be a new administration, so to speak, of section leaders come in January. What we're finding in our conversation as this bubbles up is that every section does things differently in terms of how they share. So really wanted to get a sense of you all talking to each other and us to learn kind of how you transition information from section leader to section leader. We've identified actually a couple of section leaders on this call who can help kick off this discussion. We've got a couple of folks from informatics, and we've got folks from the education section. So I would ask maybe Tanya, who's the immediate past president from the education section, that you come on and maybe start to talk about how you did this, and then have informatics and others jump in. Does that sound good?
Thank you, Rosa. What's fun and special about the education section is that we're new. And that means that we don't have a long history of how it was always done. It means we're not crippled by, but we've always done it this way, we can't change. But it also means that with limited exception, there's nobody to ask. And we also operate very heavily within an environment of what I'm just going to call fear that we screw something up, and fear that if we as the leaders of a new section screw something up, the section will never thrive and will be, somehow excised from the AGU world. So we've worked very hard as first, second, third, and now fourth presidents to tell each other everything. And we've developed spreadsheets that, and I got to give Rosa lots of credit because she helped the the accounting spreadsheets that we get quarterly to change. But when I started, I really struggled to make heads or tails out of them. And we've also had some issues of being reimbursed for this or not reimbursed for that. And unlike sections that have a lot of money, we count pennies. And so for us, a slip up of $200 feels really huge. So we have a budget spreadsheet that's carefully color coded with little notes on the side that this is exactly what it means. This is exactly when it's due. And we have found that although there are a lot of resources available in the Connect community library, it's very easy to get overwhelmed there. So we simply, we've had day-long transition meetings from one president to another in which we say, okay, these are the 3 or 4 spreadsheets and topics that are going to blindside you the most. And like all of a sudden, who's going to review your fellowship applications? Say what? So we work very hard to have, a small number of very clear multicolor spreadsheets that we pass from person to person, and we archive them too, and we have them in Google Docs. But that's our bread and butter. I don't know, Rosa, is there anything more I probably ought to say or less?
No, I think that's great. I would invite Danny. Actually, we just had a conversation with Danny and Krissa from the informatics section on this as well, and maybe you guys have something to add based on that too.
Well, for us, and I think I saw Krissa on the call too, so we can tag team this here, but we have a lot of similarities in the sense that we're relatively new and we're relatively small. We also had a really highly engaged former leadership that was really invested in getting the section up and running, but and sustained their engagement for a very long period of time. And much of our transition information was oral, which was hamstringing us when suddenly we wanted to be very nimble and rapid, and there were a lot of things that we wanted to engage in. And as I became president and president-elect was coming in, Krissa was coming in, we lost a lot of that former leadership and all that corporate memory, all that corporate oral memory. And so the first year that I came on as president and Krista was with me, we did a lot of work we have been doing a lot of work to clean up a Google Drive that we have that has all of our sort of committee level documentation and then governance. We also went through the exercise of completing the section operating guidelines, which admittedly was a task to get people to put eyes on it. And we're still trying to do that and acknowledge that it's a living document. So that's been helping, at least personally, I can say that helps me for reference. We also include all of the executive leadership on all of the correspondence with the section. So our secretary and our president, past president, are on all that sort of higher level communication with the sections. Google folder, I did mention, we have one for each committee and then one for governance. I will agree that Connect is overwhelming, and we hear that from section members as well. We do have a spreadsheet that is like what you need to worry about and when, but I love Tanya having the follow through of here's where you go to get that information. I don't think we've connected those dots yet or connected those pieces. But you know, we were really, I feel like we were really at a loss. I had, you know, Krista was coming in as a new to AGU person, and I was highly reliant on all the oral history of the previous leadership, and there was a mass exodus. Our secretary, who had extended to almost a third round of her tenure, her role's tenure, and was a huge wellspring of section related information. She was also our early career rep. She was our web developer. She wore many hats, and she transitioned on as a volunteer. And so we were really at a disadvantage. So we've been slowly going through this transition of learning what is important to pass on to the next leadership. So I think this is a great topic. And I've just been jotting down notes as even Tanya was talking. So it's been great. But I'll let Krista also chime in as well.
Yeah, thanks, Danny. I think you covered most of it. It definitely has helped having the documentation that we do have. For me personally, like, and that one spreadsheet that I guess Jeff had made, our late past president, but that lists like at least a theoretical timeline of when things happen, just so that we can, at least for me, like just having kind of that big, I need that big picture, like of, okay, what are all the things that are on the horizon that we need to be aware of? That's definitely been very helpful. Yeah.
Thanks, you guys. How about others of you? How are you kind of keeping track of information? Like we mentioned, there's going to be some transition of leadership come January. How are you prepping for that? Any tips and tricks or ideas or questions you have of each other?
Actually, Rosa, can I chime in with one other thing that we've been doing?
Yeah, please.
Informatics. One thing we started doing within the last year or so. So we have a running set of notes for our executive committee, and that's really helpful too, because then you have that history, you can go back and it's all in one document. You don't have to, look around for multiple documents. Oh shoot, there was another piece I wanted to mention about that. Oh, and I guess the same thing, like with our new, like just putting in more systematic practices. Like after our executive committee meetings once a month, then we have a draft email for like what's going to go out to the rest of the section. And that also is in a running document. So we can look back and be like, okay, what did we say last time? Or, it's all in one place. So I think those are a couple of administrative tricks that we've been implementing.
Thanks for that. Tanya, you've got your hand up.
I'll add that there's AGU is doing a great job of putting together an annual calendar. Like this is February. This is what happens in February. At section leadership, we tend to be more task focused than time focused. And so it's more like elections. When do you have to do what for elections? Fellows nominations, when do you have to do what for fellows? Fall meeting, when does this need to happen? Because you delegate somebody to be in charge of each one of these tasks. So having both types of calendars helps very much.
Thank you. Janet?
Yes, this is incredibly helpful. We are a very old section. Apparently we were initiated in 1920 or something, well before my time, but like very old. So we have a long history. But we developed in 2022, we also developed a set of guidelines, and that has just been so helpful for us. It's like a 15-page living document, but it not only it has links to everything, but it also outlines the duties of every single person on the executive committee. And then Danny was talking about, the last 4 or 5 pages are really like, okay, it's January. What does the president need to do in January, February, March? And it goes through every month of the year. And so I found that incredibly helpful, just as just a check at the first of the month. But yeah, this document that Claire Ramers initiated, and that the executive committee, Ocean Sciences Executive Committee as a whole, contributed to, is just been fantastic for our section leadership, I think.
That's great. Thanks, Janet. And John, I see you've put something in the chat of an example as well. That's great. And also there's a question, I'm just going through the chat here. Kimberly, you asked a question. Danny, you responded about operating guidelines or operating plans. I think that's something maybe we can bring the template back for the next meeting, but my understanding is that a while ago, Cheryl of our governance team provided a template. It may have been last year, but we can reconfirm that to pull together operating guidelines for each section. But Danny, do you want to talk to that?
Sure. It was provided by Cheryl, and it was something that we found sort of serendipitously. It had been provided during our now late past president's tenure as president, and I think it just rolled off of his to-do list. And so we picked it up because we were struggling, and we decided, okay, so we're going to communicate to the rest of the leadership and committees nominally how we feel everything should run, and then vet it with them. And we've gotten through most of the committees. It was challenging because there was a lot of transition going on. So it was a templated form, was several pages long, and I reached out to Cheryl just this past year to say, we finished this. I don't know what the timeline was. And Cheryl had admittedly dropped it. Like she said, some people handed it in last year, some people, still haven't ever done it. But it's been hugely valuable for me as a reference document. So if you haven't done it, I think it's really helpful, and it's great for the entire leadership team of the section to see what the expectation is of the roles. It's really helpful in recruiting new chairs for committees as well. So you can just point to the bookmark section in Google Drive. It's been nice.
Yeah, thanks for that. And I think we probably should bring that back in terms of, and maybe bring Cheryl in or reconstitute the template. And I may ask for my colleagues' help on this, but I'm seeing, Kimberly, you're talking about the bylaws. My understanding is that the operating plans are to take the place of bylaws. There's one set of bylaws, AGU's bylaws, right? So, there may be some legal issues there in terms of what we're calling things, and that's why they're turning into operational plans. But anyone else can chime in if that's your understanding. Okay. All right. Anything else? What kind of tools do you think AGU can help support you with in terms of sharing information, transitioning information? What do you need? Go ahead, Kimberly. I think I saw you come off of mute.
I did. Thanks. Yeah, this is super helpful. It's great to talk about. Thanks for leading this discussion. My question is kind of somewhat tangential, but also not, so I'm just gonna ask it. There have been some of us meeting about sort of DEI related issues that we're finding in common across sections, and wondering if AGU has a way of supporting us in like either continuing surveys that some of us might have started, or coming up with a uniform way of handling data that's borderline like private information that might be gathered in conjunction with such surveys. Is that more important? It might be just like I should postpone for another time, but it sort of reminded me that I started doing it as the president-elect. Maybe the first year of my president, but it hasn't, it's hard to continue because it was so labor intensive.
Yeah, no, thanks for bringing that up. I'm not sure about the data issue. I will say, and I think Kimberly, I may have worked with you on this when I first came into AGU of having that survey done, some of my team. And we can still kind of assist with surveying. I think probably internally we need to kind of figure out the structure of how we're supporting surveying among sections and members. There's, a thing such as survey fatigue as well that we want to look out for and really support that. But I think that's something that we could keep talking about. Do others want to chime in on that or have questions about that? Okay. Got about 5 minutes left, depending on what clock I'm looking at. So we can do open mic as well. Any other questions or things you want to talk about? Something I may have missed in the chat, perhaps? Anything we can be doing? Again, tools and resources for transitioning information. Yeah, Janet.
Oh, totally unrelated, Rosa, but
that's good.
It's open mic.
Yes.
When will the slate for the elections be opened? Do you know?
That is a good question. I do not know. But we can come back to you.
Yeah, but
I know that there's a website for that as well, so we can just go kind of give a check of that. But are any of my colleagues here aware?
I believe the elections start in September.
But there's an announcement period, isn't there? I'll stand back.
We'll get back to you with those dates.
Yeah, we will.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else, anyone? Stephen?
Yeah, in regards to the timeline for that sort of thing, we've submitted our recommendations for the various GPE section awards, and we're not supposed to let the people we choose for awards know about it until AGU's done its due diligence. And gosh, I understand why that happens, because I was sort of involved in an ethics committee a long time ago that dealt with what happens when you don't do due diligence on these awardees. But the timeline between submitting an abstract and deciding to come to the meeting is pretty well upon us. And I would just say that we really ought to be trying to open up a little more time between letting these awardees know that they are going to be honored at the meeting and the time when they will make the decision to submit an abstract and come to the meeting.
Now that's not the first time. Yeah, I've heard that. Yeah, so that we can look at the timeline and
I think CLT is considering the due diligence step that we are going to take on August 15th, I think is when we're
It
going to
is August 15th. Yeah,
we're going to review all the awards.
yeah. All right.
Sorry, can you, sorry to hop off and say this, but John, can you repeat what you just said? August 15th is what?
The CLT, the Council Leadership Team, which reviews all the proposed awardees, we have to review all those files. It's a couple thousand pages of stuff, and go through and approve them as being free of conflict.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's a certification process. Yeah.
Okay, so what does that mean in terms of when sections can contact their awardees? Like
It's certainly, I'm just saying it won't be before August 15th. I don't know exactly what the steps are after that. But I'm
Okay.
just as one of the benchmarks.
Thank you so much.
Okay. And this isn't been put out there yet, but it will, the announcement date for all awardees is September 15th. So there's some work between, August and September 15th that has to happen, right, John? Yeah. Yeah, go ahead, Suzanne.
I feel like this is actually a really important point. I completely agree with Steve's point that, if you're going to be honored at the meeting, but you learn that after the abstract deadline has passed,
Right.
and maybe you didn't submit an abstract this year, that just is really an unfortunate situation. It would be nice to be able to reach out to the people that we have selected for awards, and at least maybe with a caveat that assuming that nothing goes wrong with the the ethical
Right.
process,
Mhm.
you will receive this award, and be able to do that now instead of waiting until late August.
Mhm.
So, hi, this is Lee. I'm just going to just chime in real quick because Olivia and I met earlier today to talk about this. So she is, as the name for lecture recipients are coming in, she is starting to reach out to them. So because she knew that there were some concerns about the timeline with the abstract submission deadline. So those are going to go out a little bit earlier than the notifications just for the award recipients.
So
that
which ones are you reaching out to?
The section lecture. So as the committees are finalizing the recipients, and as the section presidents sign off on them, she is planning to reach out to them earlier so that they can be informed about the lecture.
And I just want to add to that, Nicole Oliphant in the scientific programs team, happy to work directly with anyone on whether we need to save a space in a session or kind of what we're thinking. So please consider them as partners in this process as well, because we want to make sure that that goes smoothly and it's not, a pain for the person who's receiving the award to then suddenly be like, well, you missed it, you missed the opportunity for the abstract. They will work with you to make sure that those things can get in.
So the section lecture isn't the one that worries me, because I've been told that you can submit an abstract for the section lecture after the abstract deadline is passed. It's the awardees of the section honors, in my case, the Gilbert and Nagata Awards, who may be international people who may need to, their institution, for example, may not let them come to the meeting unless they submit an abstract. So we really have to let them know now. And yes, the caveat will be that they're subject to vetting by the AGU due diligence, but we need to tell them now.
I think, and Guido Cervone is on this too, and he has some interest in this. He's worked with the program committee in the past. But Steve, I think this is something we should probably explore a little bit further. And I think Rosa and I can follow up and maybe get a group together to talk about it.
Yeah.
We understand, because we get calls every year from people who are like, but I'm getting an award and I missed my opportunity. So let's talk about it further.
Agree. We are at time, but can stay on for anyone who wants to ask any last questions. All right, I see people jumping off, so I'm going to say thank you. The recording will go out today or tomorrow to all section leaders, and let us know what topics you want to hear about, because often you let us know, and they show up here. So thanks very much, everyone. See you soon.
Thanks, Rosa. Thanks all.
Thank you.